In today's episode of the Highway 62 podcast, I'm talking to Eric Linnert, the man behind the Basin Bike Path. That's right, a dedicated bike path that would go all through the Morongo Basin. Not only would this be just a great thing for the community, but this could also be one of the easiest and best economic moves that the area could make. We're going to talk all about those elements of having a bike path in the Morongo Basin. This one's near and dear to my heart. I hope you enjoy the episode. That's coming up right now. All right, Eric Linnert, welcome to the Highway 62 podcast. Thanks so much for joining me this afternoon.
Thanks, Danny. It's great to be here.
And as I mentioned, as we were chatting ahead of time, best video and audio quality so far of any guest I've had. You've got the blurred background and everything. It's looking super pro. So I appreciate the extra effort and take note for all the future guests. So
Sorry,
as
y'all.
I mentioned, as I mentioned in the intro here, this is going to be the cycling or bicycling episode, and we're going to get into that. But before we do that, why don't you just give us a little bit of your background, how you ended up being out here in the desert and all that good stuff?
Yeah, thanks. So I'm originally from Orange County, and then I grew up there, went to school in Los Angeles. And then about 25, I realized my world was just Southern California. So I wanted to get out, and my mother is from Argentina. So I always had that desire to go connect with those roots. So I moved down to Argentina, did about 4 years there. Then moved back to the States, went up to Seattle, spent about 2 years. And then in about 2019, like going into 2019, decided to come back south and just honestly got drawn to the desert. It was like such a whim, and was brought out here. And it's been, almost 7 years now. So it's pretty crazy, yeah, to reflect on that whole journey.
Yeah, Argentina, beautiful country. I've been fortunate enough to go 4 or 5 times. I've been there playing shows with the band, and was just there last year. So
Wow.
always a beautiful spot to go to.
Yeah, I don't get to go enough. Last time I was there was the World Cup in 2022, which was quite a
Yeah.
time considering how that ended up.
I can imagine. So, the way I kind of connected with you and found you was I came across a Instagram video, and it, part of the video was you speaking. It looked like maybe a city council meeting or something like that. And then just talking about bicycles and cycling and, the possibility and benefits of, a bike path, a bike trail out here in the Morongo Basin. And of course, it clicked right on for me. I've been a lifelong cyclist. One of my very first jobs, like 14, 15 years old, was working at a Schwinn bike shop outside of Chicago. I was a bicycle mechanic for many years. And, I was into cycling and watching, the Tour de France back then when, nobody, in America really paid attention to it at all. And I used to read Bicycling magazine back when it was all about, touring, bicycle touring, and it was people riding across the country with, all their camping gear on their bicycles. And it looked so like romantic to me back then. It was like I just lived for it. And then, through the years, I did a lot of cycling on and off. And then in my 30s, I really got back into it to the point where, I was just racing mountain bikes and did a little bit of road racing, always at, beginner kind of level and stuff, but have just always been, somebody who loved two wheels, bicycles and motorcycles. So I latched on to that right away and reached out to you. So tell us a little bit about what was that event that you were speaking at?
Yeah. I'm glad that you reached out too, because that post, I like to joke that it went like desert viral, which isn't much, but it's definitely the most engagement I've had. So that meeting that I spoke on was a Yucca Valley Town Council meeting. And, ever since I moved out here, I've been an avid rider. Even before I lived in Yucca, I was living in Joshua Tree, and I
Hmm.
would ride. It's about like 6 miles back and forth to Frontier Cafe and like work remote on a Friday. That was how I
Yeah.
would like get out of my, home office. And if people know that route, it's a kind of hairy ride along Altaloma Yucca Trail. There's no bike path. It's quite narrow. So anyways, fast forward to now, I still like to ride. I'm a lot more in town now. I'm over here behind Vaughn's, like in the airport district. Um, so super accessible, but it still is pretty dicey, getting around town. And the impetus to finally like make public comment was that there were these two bicycle related deaths in the last month or two. One was in 29 Palms, and then one was in Yucca Valley, just like a block up from the post office, really close to the high school. And it wasn't like any kind of weird situation where maybe the person wasn't in their wits. It was like a Prius hit them and the man was in his 60s. It's like that shouldn't be happening, right? So anyways, because of my background in writing and wanting to make, like selfishly wanting to make this area more bikeable, I decided to finally, go and make public comment. And it's been incredible. I mean, even just after that meeting, one of the town council members was like, did you know that some guy like talked about this exact same idea 10 years ago? And I was like, wait, what? And sure enough, like I was able to find the Z1077 article about it from 10 years, like literally 10
Wow.
years ago. And I was able to track this guy down. He's an older gentleman. He used to teach at Copper Mountain College. And so we've been kind of like corresponding through email. We're gonna meet up soon, but he was able to share like all this precedence, and they had a full like map of the entire basin. Like we're talking from Morongo Valley all the way like up into Pioneer Town, Pipes Canyon, like Landers, the Mesa, all the way to 29, and then back, through the national park. And so it's all like mapped out. I don't know whatever happened with that. I'm sure like, resources and all those things, but yeah, like I said, it's been really amazing just to see the feedback and support from people, either friends or just random people that live in the community that feel the same way as us, that really would love to ride. And maybe they used to ride, but then they moved here and it's like, it's just really sketchy. So they
Yeah.
don't feel safe to do it.
It's an interesting thing because when I moved out here, I moved up here from Orange County.
Nice.
And, something about Orange County is it's phenomenal for bike riding. And, I miss that. My girlfriend still lives, she just moved from Irvine down in Laguna Hills, but, you're familiar with Irvine and for the bad rap that it gets for being very cookie cutter, suburban, which is true. You're not going to find the coolest restaurants and, things like that there. But their bicycle paths and open park spaces is probably one of the best in the country for sure. And, I think for people that haven't experienced that or, haven't enjoyed it, I would leave her house and only ride, maybe a quarter mile to get to a path. And once you're on those bike paths, you can ride hundreds of miles and never cross a street or come in contact with a car. And it's a wide range of people. It is people pushing walking on that trail, pushing a baby stroller, riding a simple bicycle with their child on there, kids on their e-bikes going to and from school, people commuting to work, old, elderly people riding an e-bike to the store. And you have, you'll see a hardcore racing cyclist as well. And everybody interacts and gets along just fine and respects each other's space and cycling. And it's really quite amazing,
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, when I go back to visit my family, because they're in like Orange.
Mm-hmm.
I take this bike path. It's a Santiago bike path
Yeah,
on Saturdays to the farmers market, and
sure,
it is
sure.
like one of the best commutes. And even when after I graduated in LA, I was working out in Santa Monica, but I would take the boardwalk down, down to work. And then I would take my bike into a little like bike storage area that had lockers and showers. And it was the best commute, like hands down. I mean,
Yeah.
and I've worked remote, where you just, wear your pajamas. You can't
Yeah.
beat that. It's like
Yeah.
something about that ride. You get kind of a nice sweat going. You get out in the sun, and it's honestly, it's incredible. And I actually didn't know that about Irvine. I used to grow up, playing club soccer in Irvine, but I haven't really biked it. So I'm looking
Oh,
for,
it's
more good
amazing.
examples to follow. So I'll certainly follow,
Yeah.
follow up on that.
Yeah. And, and when I moved out here, to be honest, I don't want to say I moved out here on a whim, but I didn't investigate kind of like what the cycling world would be like. I kind of assumed, I think, that it would be better for bike riding. And I mountain bike, but also have like a gravel bike, and um, but I'm not like, I know it's hard to tell looking at me. I'm not the, the lycra clad racer guy anymore. I'm more into what, you might call just, like pleasure cycling or adventure cycling. I like the idea of putting the camping gear on a bicycle, and there's amazing, trails and routes throughout America to do on a bicycle. But I was pretty disappointed at just, there's no bike lanes. Um, there's very little mountain biking. There's, really just one mountain bike trail outside of the park. And I understand, obviously, we can't do these things inside the park necessarily, but I did, thought to myself, I'm like, well, what about all these other mountainy areas outside of the park here that somebody hasn't developed into, a free mountain bike park? And I think a big part of what, is missing is maybe that people don't understand kind of like the economic elements of what this, what this can do. I do, I had heard, and we'll come back to some of these other things, but I had heard talk of a bike path that would go all the way from 29 into Yucca. Is there still any, is that moving forward? Is there any talk about that?
As far as I know, I'm the only one that's brought this back up, aside from that fellow 10 years ago. I will say though that I like cross posted my Instagram video to Facebook to like one of the groups, and one of the Yucca Valley planning commissioners chimed in, who's, grown up here and knows a lot about the area and the logistics, and was suggesting that, maybe it could follow the floodplain like path that goes through Yucca. I think it goes like maybe to Sunfair or Sunburst and Joshua Tree. I don't know how far east it goes past that. But I think that's a really interesting idea if we're trying to really go, west to east or vice versa. Because other than that, it's going to be a challenge. Going along the highway is windy. You're getting a lot of wind from the cars. It's loud. It's dangerous.
Yeah.
And if you try to even like cut into some of those properties, now you're talking about private lands. The county maintains those flood channel areas. It's not currently paved, but that's what the Lodez has done in the Coachella Valley Link, which I mentioned as one of my inspirations. They span from Palm Springs all the way to Indio. It's like 40 miles, and it's an incredible project. I think it's possible. It for sure is an uphill battle, which is the pun of the conversation, I guess.
Yeah. The flood channel going through 29, they actually have paved an area alongside it, which looks similar to like a bike path. I mean, I think it's really, I'm pretty sure it's multi-use, walking and bike riding, but it's nicely new paved, and there's some benches along the way and dog walking, potty bags, and it's nicely done but it's a very small section, and it does still cross over, some side streets and things like that. But a lot of those long paths in Orange County do follow like the Irvine, I think they call it Mountains to Sea. So you can go practically from the mountains all the way to Newport Beach. It follows, like I don't know, it's not a river, but it's kind of, it's a waterway.
River bed. Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah. And then, well, yeah, the Santa Ana one is farther up, but yeah, that's following the Santa Ana River. And then there's some east-west stuff out there in, the Corona area. And they kind of always do seem to follow those kind of, what we have for rivers,
Right.
And I know there's stuff, along the LA River and things like that. So that is a potential, and I think, you know, it's important for people to kind of understand, like when we talk about bicycle riding and again, a lot of times when you talk about cycling, people just think of like, they're out driving their car and they've come across a group of, 10 like hardcore cyclists and, they're blocking my way or, all those kind of things. And that's a whole nother story. But, what we're really talking about is a wide ranging multi-use type of trail here that's good for everything from kids all the way to people that do want to get some fitness out of it and do a 40, 50, 60-mile ride in an afternoon.
Yeah, and that's a good point because I realized after I made this video that I'm very much like an adventure rider. I'm not, one of those cyclists that have the proper outfits and yeah, there definitely is a stereotype. There were some people on, Facebook that very quickly put me into that category. So yeah, it is important to, understand that this is more like inclusive for all of the community. And yeah, just the potential there, I think, like you said earlier, the economics around it.
Yeah. When I came out here and felt there was a lack of mountain biking, I had thought about, talking to the city councils and whatnot, and it made me think about the town of Bentonville, Arkansas. And Bentonville, Arkansas is now considered the mountain biking capital of the world. And it's Arkansas, right? Now, they have a little bit of a head start because it is, they have Walmart money. That's kind of the headquarters of Walmart.
True,
So
yeah,
Walmart can
true.
put money into the city. But what Bentonville did was built their whole downtown based around this amazing cycling infrastructure. So from the little downtown, it's like fingers that just go out of the city. And it starts with bike paths. And there's everything from little kids to, families. And all these bike paths kind of congregate in the downtown area, which is now filled with like amazing coffee shops and amazing places to eat and a whole like 10 high-end great bike shops. And then as you ride these paths out of town, it's everything from a trail for a young kid to learn how to mountain bike all the way to, your double black diamond professional level jump trails. And the entire economy of this town is based around cycling. And I think that's what I think about out here is if you could bring people, because people do come through here cycling. I see him. I run into him at the Starbucks and I talk to him and he's, guys that are riding from Canada to Mexico. And there is a couple of bike packing routes that go right through Joshua Tree. So there is, adventure cycling is kind of coming through the area, but we don't really have any kind of infrastructure built around supporting it or expanding on it.
Yeah, wow. So much. I'm really happy that you went there towards the urban planning stuff because that's what I get super excited about.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it's interesting you mentioned Bentonville too, because there's a really cool movement happening through the South. It's like Strongtown movement. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of that, but they're like really on these like community building efforts and making places walkable, and that came to mind. And then also you look at like the Europeans, right? The Dutch, places like Amsterdam, which is bike centered culture. And I mean, I think there is a direct correlation to economic development. So when we look at the challenges of this type of idea, it's like, okay, if we start bringing those numbers with this idea, hey, like this is going to stimulate business in our economy. I think that really pushes the envelope a lot more. And then the last thing I want to say is regarding that adventure riding, like because we have the national park, like I've been to the national park that sticks out for me is Arches in Moab.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a bike path that you can take. I think it's like pretty far down the river. I think it's the Colorado River that goes into the national park. And it's like you see cyclists from all over the world doing that. And it's like, this could have I mean, Joshua Tree is already a global icon.
Right.
You could tap into that and just, magnify the attraction too, if this started. So that, I think, the potential is certainly there.
Yeah. And there's some there's a 50-miler bike ride that goes into the park every year, like an organized
Right.
ride.
129, yeah.
And I see some videos of some gravel cyclists, make some videos coming out to ride Joshua Tree, but it's kind of all an afterthought right now. And I think, again, if you're a small business owner in this area, what you have to understand about most, especially the people that will travel, right? If you make a cool riding area out here, people that will drive out to stay for the weekend with their bikes, they're bringing a $4,000 bicycle with them, right? They have money and they want to spend it at your coffee shop and at your restaurant and at your stores. And that's the economic impact of attracting cyclists, because for the most part, it's a really kind of an expensive, like the people that are really into it, I'll drive a used car and have 3 or 4, $5,000 bicycles in my garage,
That's true, yeah.
and so, people will travel to do cycling. So there's, the hotels and the Airbnbs and whatnot. And obviously they got to eat and drink and all those, when they're done with a great ride, they want to go somewhere and sit down and have a great meal. And it's really, I know that it's a big planning and engineering process to make something cool. But I just feel like from an economic standpoint, it could be one of the biggest things to happen to the area ever.
I agree. Oh yeah. And I mean, another thing that comes up too is something that I've noticed since I've been here is the culture around like drinking and driving in this
Yeah.
area, so if you have, bike paths that are actually, I mean, of course it gets a little challenging at nighttime, but if you're suddenly, able to ride places and you
Yep.
can do, a pub crawl on a bicycle, that could really move the needle there too. So there's so many like benefits to this type
Absolutely.
of deal, like the community building, the economic development, just like so much. And yeah, I'm happy that you're seeing it the same way.
Yeah, I mean, I just, again, I've just been so immersed in, in the cycling world and culture for years, and just another kind of story for people, and I'm trying to kind of present some of these because I'm trying to keep the people that hate bicycle riders because they think they just block the road, or don't think they want to listen to this episode because they're not into cycling. I'm trying to kind of present like the other element of this whole thing that is so important. But another huge YouTuber, Seth from Burn Peak, he's out in the Asheville, North Carolina area. They took a kind of mountainous area in a park. He crowdfunded through his YouTube channel the finances needed to hire a professional trail building crew to build this mountain bike park. And it's a mountain bike park where you have to, ride yourself to the top of the trails. But the city embraced it. The area embraced what is now, it's a totally free, mountain bike park that people, there's a parking lot, people ride up to the top, there's easy trails going down, and there's triple black diamonds, and there's everything in between. He got manufacturers to supply tool stations and all this cool stuff. And again, it's free to the community. The big expense obviously was, a professional trail building crew, but it was a couple $1 million, which in the grand scheme of what gets spent on things is nothing. And it's a huge economic, impact for the area. And it's a free bike park for people to go to. And it's just kind of another example of how these kind of developments, impact cities, and there are little towns all through, especially on the West Coast, Anvil, California, up in Northern California, is just an old mining mountain town. The entire economy is mountain biking now.
Really?
I mean, the whole
Oh my
economy.
gosh, I got to write all these. Well, I'll watch all this later. Yeah.
That's a great place. Up in Colorado, I'm trying to think of the name of the town, where they started. It's an old mining town, sits at like 10,000 feet, in Colorado, massively economic depressed. And one old timer who kind of was into bike riding was like, the mountain biking is amazing up here. I'm going to organize a 100-mile mountain bike race. And it became this legendary thing that, professional cyclists, and eventually Lance Armstrong, well, after he retired, he went and rode the Leadville, Colorado is the name of the place.
Cool. Okay.
He went and rode the Leadville 100. There's documentaries on Netflix about it. Their whole economy is adventure now. It's running races and, mountain rafting and just all this stuff. And the whole town has been revitalized through what started as cycling. And, so I think that is something for civic leaders in the area to really take a hard look at when you look at what you can spend money on and what the return could be on those things.
Yeah. And I mean, in the desert, it's challenging. We need to be resilient with how we're, economically bringing in dollars. If it's just tourism, okay, well, how do we like add more to that? Because I see all those, places that you list, and I'm like, there's probably a food truck park at the base of that mountain.
Yeah, right.
Or
right.
a bar, or
Yes.
a coffee shop, and they're providing jobs, and there's a bike shop. It's like, it's that circular economy, and it's all here, right? It's all staying here. So yeah, I think that's just, I mean, the real honey of it all.
I mean, it just, to be in an area where most of the year, I mean, even in the winter here, you can cycle most of the time. Maybe the height of the summer, you're going to stay off your bike. But other than that, spring, winter, and fall, it's prime cycling out here. And, I don't even know if there's, the one bike shop in Joshua Tree, I believe, closed.
I just heard that.
There's nothing in 29 Palms, and I don't know if there's a bike shop in Yucca or not.
I've been taking my bike to a guy that does it in a garage. Shout out to Nick at Gypsy Cycles. Yeah, he's cool. But yeah, I mean, I heard that and I was just really disappointed. And so, yeah, we gotta build the ecosystem, right? And start, I mean, there's layers to this too. I mean,
Sure.
Obviously, like the end goal is to have the whole basin be bikeable, but like at the very least, like let's just get some bike lanes, in some of these areas, because there's nothing, there's not even lanes, there's not even signs sometimes, but so there's phases to it all. But yeah, I mean, it would just be so great for the area. On so many levels, as we've discussed.
Right. Yeah. And, and I do see people out riding, and I see some hardcore looking, cyclists, and there's probably, guys and girls at the Marine Corps base that cycle for fitness. And I do see them out there, but, I've done quite a bit of riding around 29 and stuff. And yeah, it's a little treacherous at times. I mean, luckily it's a low, I can stay off of 62 and it's low traffic for the most part, which is helpful, but it's not cycling friendly at all.
Yeah, somebody commented on my video saying like kind of by the casino there, I don't remember the streets, but there's like a dedicated, like separate even little side.
There's a pathway over there. It's not very long. And there's some bike lanes through some of those newer streets and areas. Occasionally I'll run into one. But again, just compared to riding around Orange County, where every street has a bike lane practically, almost every street. And it's just, it's just amazing. You could just go ride your bike on a path with no cars for an entire afternoon, get off on whatever little side street you want to get off on to go eat or, go wherever you want to go, and a little bit.
Well, I mean, look, like there's a lot of hate, and a lot of antagonism on the road. But at the end of the day, guys, like, look at gas. Look at the price of gas. Like, that's not going down. Like, I would much rather save, all the money that I spend for gas and just take my bicycle if I could.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah. And another thing that you mentioned the base earlier, I did see that I think like 29, the last city council meeting in 29 Palms, they're going to open the base to the public again because they want to start generating more like, connection between the area. That's great. So for the businesses on base and, more cross collaboration. So, I mean, we could extend this bike path like up Adobe and all the way into the base, like right around the base. How cool would that be? And tap into, that large resource and community, right? Because at the end of the day, a lot of this is just about connecting community.
Hey folks, Seth here, co-founder of Cliffhanger Guides based in Joshua Tree, California. I hope you're enjoying listening to the Highway 62 podcast with our good friend Danny. We wanted to let all of you know that for the winter of 25-26, all residents in the Morongo Basin will receive a 25 to 50% off discount on all non-peak season date Cliffhanger Guides trips. Head on over to our website, cliffhangerguides.com, shoot us an email with a promo code JTROCKS, and let's get you out on an adventure in Joshua Tree National Park.
What do you think, is kind of the next step? Like, what can we do? And
so we've spun off a separate Instagram account. It's called the Basin Bike Path. So make sure to follow that, because there was a lot of people who, wanted to get involved.
Okay.
And part of this, is going to require a lot of finessing with the local municipalities, the county. So we're going to have to stay on. We're going to have to organize. So we're building that network. We're putting the word out. We're researching. You've been saying amazing examples that I'm going to have to circle back on, because I want to look at all that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of research, and it outside the area and within the area, what happened 10 years ago. So I would say the most immediate next step is to just follow, stay in touch. We're going to probably create a email network so we can, blast it out. Or maybe there'll be also a Facebook group for the folks, and maybe even a website if you're not on social media. So that's the next step. And, from there, we just got to keep on it. And I mean, it can only get better. I know it's, kind of a sad state of affairs at the moment, but, it's certainly possible, right? We're the community. So many people can show up. And at the end of the day, that's what matters. The voices of the community come into those meetings, and showing support.
Yeah, absolutely. Eric, thank you so much for your time. I mean, I could talk about this stuff all day, all day long. I really appreciate you, jumping on with me. I know you kind of you didn't mean to thrust yourself into the forefront of leading the cycling challenge in the Basin area, and it just kind of happened. But hey, it is what it is. You're here now, so you got to deal with it.
Yeah, no, thank you, Danny. I really do appreciate it. And we should separately rap about all stuff. So
absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. I think we've got a lot we can do. Thanks so much for your time,
podcast, man. Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much for being with me. How would you like to sponsor an episode of the Highway 62 podcast? If you have a small business and you want to promote it, or you have a special event coming up that you'd like to let more people know about it, just send me a message on Instagram. You can even email me at dannymusicfactory@gmail.com. I got budgets to fit just about anybody. And just imagine how your friends and family are going to be impressed when they hear your ad on a podcast.